I'm using my presentation.
Okay, so you're going to share your screen when it's time?
Yes.
Okay, so the order is first Nathalia, Gloria, then Irene, and you have 8 to 10 minutes for your presentation, so we have time for questions and answers, okay? Okay, go ahead and start the session because it's time now, and let's go. Welcome back to the Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference's session on bringing gender equity to artisanal and small-scale gold mining. I have 3 incredible presenters today who have a lot of experience in this area. I'm going to introduce each of them just before they do their individual presentations, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. So be ready to pop those questions into the chat box. When you're not speaking, if you could mute your microphones, then we can keep some of the interference off the line. So our first speaker today is Nathalia Rocio Mendoza Baron, and she is a political scientist and internationalist, the gender coordinator of Alliance for Responsible Mining. She leads gender mainstreaming into the projects and processes of an organization. Previously, she worked on promoting women's rights through gender mainstreaming with the government of Bogota. She was also part of a vocational development program for women given by the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family of Korea and the EWHA Women's University. So, Nathalia, welcome. I'm going to switch over to your slides.
Yes, thank you.
Get going. And guys, I'm driving the slides today, so we'll see how this goes. If there's any mistakes, it's mine and not the presenters. All right, they're loading now. Well, they should be loading now, but it's happening slowly. Can you guys see the slides yet?
No.
Let me know when you can see them, because the system, they're loaded.
I can see it now.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for everything. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Nathalia Rocio Mendoza Baron. I represent Alliance for Responsible Mining. We are an NGO based in Colombia, and over the years we have worked in over 20 countries with artisanal and small-scale mining sector. And today we would like to present how we mainstream the gender approach in our activities and some experience of working with the gender equity perspective in the ASM sector. The next one, please. Oh, how can I? Okay, thank you. So to start, I would like to say that Alliance for Responsible Mining has worked with the gender equity in different contexts. One of them is the artisanal mining sector, where you can find more women, at least in Latin America, and the first group of women we have worked with is in the artisanal mining sector are the panners, who look for liberated gold in alluvial deposits like streams and river banks with manual methods. That's why they use the panners. And the other group are the mineral selectors, who are mostly women, and they search for the mineral that can still have some value in the areas where mines deposit their sterile rock that is not considered economically viable for the miners. And in the other hand, we also work a lot with small-scale mining companies or cooperatives that have a more structured mining operation. And in this case, women face another types or face another kind of discrimination topics. And also, women are normally a minority because the mining sector is mostly dominated by males. Next, please. However, we identified that before designing strategies to achieve gender equity, it was necessary to make a research, and that's why we made this study called Gender Gaps in Mining, Colombian ASM from a Gender Perspective, when we identify different kinds of gender gaps in the mining sector, identify all the different types of discrimination that women face in different parts of Colombia, all the gender stereotypes and imaginaries that women has to face. And we did this study thanks to Somos Tesoro project led by Pat, and this project was financed by the U.S. Department of Labor. I'm going to leave the study here, it's in Spanish. And this year, we update another types of gaps that women face in the mining sector. The first one is a low participation of women in the mining sector. The women also have care work overloaded. They have a low participation in the scientist and technology careers. They have a very bigger impact of the environmental effects. Working women usually develop the support activities in the mining sector. They face a wage gap, and they also face problems with the reconciliation of work, family, and personal life. And also they face gender-based violence. Next, please. Thank you. Another barriers that women face in the ASM are they face a masculinized sector. They also have to overcome the glass roof that they face. They also face imaginaries and gender stereotypes in the mining sector and gender discrimination. And in this part, I would like to highlight that they get punished of motherhood, and the mines that hire women think that when they hire women, they are going to have personal relationship conflicts. Next one, please. Okay. Well, in this part, I would like to highlight that Alliance for Responsible Mining is a standard setting organization, and we propose miners a progressive improvement approach, because we know that for incorporate the gender approach, this requires a cultural transformation. And that's why we develop two standards. The first one is the craft standard that is used by miners starting the formalization process. And the second one is the Fair Mine standard for more advanced mining organizations. Okay, but now the big question, how mainstreaming the gender approach? Well, we gave technical assistance to the mining, to the mines, and we helped them to create an institutional gender policy. We gave guidelines to create gender and no discrimination actions or activities in the mines, help them to prevent sexual harassment at work, help them to address the gender-based violence, and create guidelines and give technical assistance so they can give also equal access to women for training and to access for mineral access. And we also create and give support to health and safety risk with gender approach in mines. Well, and also we develop 3 strategies when we work with women. The first of all is the economic empowerment. And in this part, I would like to add and bring today 2 good examples that we made with 2 mines in Peru. The first one is Magdesa. There, they use the fair mine premium to create and give training to women to create the uniforms for miners. And in this case, they increase their incomes. And the other mine is Secomit. And with the help of U.S. Department of States and Colorado School of Mine, they made a yearly workshops for women for a very small group of mineral selectors that work in that mine. Next one, please. And okay, and our second strategy is the political empowerment and visibility. In Secomit, we found a very small group of pallequeras that's the name that they get in Peru, but it's the same for the mineral selectors. So we helped them to build an association called Divinas in Bath of Gold, and we gave them the strengthening capacity for women's leadership, train them in gender issues, help them to prevent the use of mercury because they used to use it before we work with them. And with our help, now they participate in local and national events in Peru. And our last strategy is the achieving a life free of gender violence. This year, we started the RISE project with the MIT D-Lab. This project is financed by USAID and is going to take part in 4 municipalities in Antioquia, Colombia. And finally, what can you do to support female empowerment? Well, the first one is to use the Fair Mine standard, include methods for artisanal and small-scale mining in your sourcing model, engage with initiatives such as Fair Mines with work to improve the condition of women, and support the payment of the premium that Fair Mine, for example, for the example that I already mentioned. And the last one, thank you. I would like to invite you to visit our website and join our social media for the Fair Mine Initiative and for Alliance for Responsible Mining. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So I think I'm still having a bit of a hard time loading. I noticed that my internet connection is not very good today.
I'm sorry, I just realized that we had a long, quiet pause. Was it a quiet pause for everyone? I'm still getting a quiet pause. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Hi, Andrea. I can hear you.
It was just a long, quiet pause. Okay. So it looks like, Gloria, are you saying you're having a hard time getting your screen to load?
Yes. So it's not giving me the option to select my presentation.
Is it possible for you to email over to me real quickly? Maybe we could switch to Irene and have Irene present. Oh, wait, I'm doing. Okay. Irene, you're doing your own slides unless there's a problem, right? So, Gloria, if
yes, you'll be showing from your end, yeah.
That's right, we're showing from my end. Gloria, could you email your slides over to me? And I can try to load them from here. All right. And then while she's doing that, and I'm watching my email, I'm going to introduce Gloria. So Gloria is a sustainable development practitioner with years of experience in environment and natural resource management. She's passionate about adding a gender lens to natural resource governance, working through community empowerment, communications, and research. Through the Sustainable Artisanal Mining Applied for Livelihood Advancement, the acronym is SAMALA, Project for Women and Youth, Gloria is currently leading interventions aimed toward leveling the playing field for women in the ASM sector through capacity and technical support and facilitating their participation in policy and decision-making processes. So Gloria, perhaps, so we don't run too late for questions, you could start talking through the slides because you can see them on your end, and I'll pop them up on the screen as fast as I get them.
Okay.
And for audience, pretend we can see her slides right now.
Thank you, Andrea. So my name is Gloria, as Andrea said, and I work with the Center for Environmental Policy and Advocacy. Our work focuses on mining and a lot of other natural resource management related fields. In the Samala project specifically, this is one of the newer kind of areas that we have ventured into because we've done a lot of work on policy advocacy in the mining sector. So this was a huge opportunity for us to go beyond that and make a contribution to sustainable mining in Malawi, and specifically in the ASM sector, because there has been a growing interest in the mining sector in the country lately. So this was quite an opportunity for us. So the Samala acronym in Chichewa, it's a Chichewa word, which is our local language. It basically means care. So it looks with a focus on, it looks at women specifically and youth for several reasons. Because when we looked at the mining sector here in Malawi, especially the ASM sector, we saw that there was an increasing gap in terms of inequalities. Recent studies have shown that there are increasing inequalities between men and women, and this is not spared in the extractive sector as well. And so because there's levels of high unemployment, but also because climate change has been very harsh on us here in Malawi, so a lot of women who have normally depended on farming are now looking for alternative livelihoods. But because the natural resources are also under a lot of pressure, there's been increased venturing into mining because it's popular and it's readily accessible and it's quick money for most miners and people who are engaged in mining. Now, we found that some of the key issues that were affecting women in the sector, the first issue was the issue of skills and technology. So most of the men, we have a history of mining here in the country for men who went to do mining in South Africa. At the time, it was called Teba. So a lot of them are called the people who went to Teba. So they have got some skills and some experiences in mining, but because Malawi has never been a mining country, the women don't have that exposure. So a lot of women were left behind and they didn't have the experience in mines. And back in the day, it was even harder for women to work in the mining setting. So most of them do not have that experience or those skills. So you can even see when you go to the sites that there are a lot of women. And the first question we said, maybe the women are working very hard. But what you actually see is that because the men have got advanced technologies, they go there and they're there for 2 hours and they're able to extract a lot more than women would extract in that same time. So women will spend up to 5 hours just trying to extract half of what the men can extract within 2 hours because they don't have those skills and the technology. And the second issue is that of the income inequalities. So because of the cultural aspects, because here in Malawi, a lot of, for example, land ownership, it's primarily owned by men, it's controlled by men. So even if you look at the mining value chain here, first you have to access customary land. So customary land is controlled by men. And most of them, even the chiefs, will be men. So for them to even have access to the land, it means that it's a cost for them, while men will actually own some of the land, so they can practice the mining on their own land, which is less of a cost for them. So the cost for women to extract becomes so much higher than it is for men, because if they make, for example, $10, it means up to $5 of that will go into the cost of hiring the technology from the men, the cost of paying for the land where they had to extract, as well as other costs which they incur because they don't own the capital. Another issue has been the issue of gender-based violence. So because the women will be at the sites for very long periods, in some areas, they don't all conduct the mining, but some of them do engage in other practices. For example, prostitution, and somewhere for cases where women are providing, for example, other services, support services, they will be exposed to a lot of violence from the men there, because most of them, I mean, they're quite, it's a very harsh environment for women. So there are incidences of rape, and you do have children there sometimes as well who are also exposed to these very negative practices, which can impact them in different ways. So you have cases of defilement, sexual defilement, even violence, where they're violent, where they're able to extract their own resources and they're attacked by men and they're robbed. So these are all things that they're meeting. And then there's also the issue of the environmental damage. So the women, most of them are not just miners, they also do farming, because they're looking at how they can provide food for their homes. So the impacts of mining itself on the environment has also been very negative. So because they use the same rivers where they also depend to draw water for household use, to draw water for cooking, even which they would use in agriculture, the challenge has been that the negative environmental impacts has further disadvantaged the women and making them even more vulnerable to climate change and increasing the poverty gap, especially for women. Now, the project, how we're working with communities, we're firstly looking at the issues of awareness. So specifically issues on awareness on gender, health and safety, environment, as well as child labor. On issues of gender, there's also issues of women in decision-making processes. So because the men control the capital resources, women are not very active in the decision-making processes. So it means that even the response from government and any other stakeholders, mostly it's influenced by the inputs from men. So it's not very responsive to the needs of women. So, for example, even when people have been advocating for issues of access to finance, a lot of that has been tailored around men who own land. But how there's no consideration of tailoring these financial inputs or access to financial packages that considers the fact that women do not own land, so they don't have any surety to offer for them to access those loans. So a lot of that is centered around making sure that the policies that are in place are responsive to the needs of women, and that women are more aware of the power that they hold and the role that they can play to contribute to the development of policies, but also the way that the sector works to consider their specific needs. And health and safety as well. So there's issues of mercury. In the areas where we work, there hasn't been a lot of use of mercury. However, some of the buyers that come in from across the borders, who are usually illegal smugglers as well, they have brought in mercury sometimes. And so we're looking at sensitizing the community to make sure that they're able to reject the use of mercury in those areas, and helping them understand the health impacts that it would also have on women, because in the sites where they work, while they're there, they cook with the same water. So if they're cooking with the same water that's contaminated by mercury, it means that they're at a very high risk in terms of their health and sexual reproductive health rights. We're also looking at issues of access to markets. So specifically facilitating access to markets for women involved in the sector, where you're looking at platforms like Vertigems, which are providing a readily available market for them, so that once they extract, they don't have to worry about waiting for smugglers or having the risk of being robbed or exploited by smugglers or other middlemen that come into the community, but that they'll have an already ready market for them, which can be used to sell off their products at a very reasonable price as well, and that they can use those proceeds to then continue to improve their lives. We're also looking at formalization, because this is a legal requirement here in the country in terms of registering as a cooperative. They're looking more at how the women can work together, because the men are able to come together because they have the skills, they have the resources. So providing that same platform for women as well to be able to formalize and group together and have access to finances and other technologies to improve the work that they do. Finally, we have had the opportunities to collaborate with partners such as Nyasa Cooperative, which is a huge cooperative here in the country, and they're able to buy they're able to propose platforms, or even go to the communities and buy straight from the women at a very good price, which is also very reasonable for them to be able to add value right here in the country, therefore, increasing even the value chain in terms of in-country production. But also the linkages with Vertigem, which has really brought in a whole new dynamic in terms of marketing. There's also issues of access to research. That's one of the key areas that we're interested in, to see how we can access research that speaks to technology that can be used by women, that's not very labor intensive, but allows them to increase their levels of productivity, as well as looking at issues of mercury and how we can continue to bring those issues to the attention of the communities, as well as actually making sure that we're tracking in the communities whether there are such practices in the community, and making sure that they're aware and that they're vigilant against smugglers who may bring in such technologies. So in a nutshell, this is the project that we're implementing. This is the Samala project. It's the care project. It's all about caring for the environment, caring for women, and caring for the youth so that they can also have access to sustainable livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Gloria, you may need to release the screen sharing that was initiated on your computer so I can load up the next slides. So while she's doing that, I'm going to introduce Irene Owusu-Poku. Irene is a public health professional in Ghana, and she has a passion for sustainable development and gender equality and women's empowerment. She's the National Program Director of the Golden Line program in Ghana. The Golden Line was launched in 2016 by Simavi, Solidaridad, and Healthy Entrepreneurs to contribute to economic and social empowerment of women in and around the artisanal and small-scale gold mining operations in Ghana and in Tanzania. This 5-year program is funded by the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it aims to improve women's working conditions and their economic position within the gold mines. So now I'm going to share Irene's presentation for her. Let me know when you can see it. Is that I need to shift the screen. I've got the wrong one up. Sorry about that. That's the one that's supposed to be up. There. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, it's all yours.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining the conversation around gender equity in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. My name is Irene Owusu-Poku, the National Program Coordinator for the Golden Line Program in Ghana. Yes, so first of all, I'll take you through what Golden Line is, just an overview, and then I'll narrow down to what problems exist in small-scale mining with reference to women, and then how we are approaching this problem, bringing the gender lens or gender mainstreaming to solving the problems. Yes, so quickly, next. So the Golden Line program, as Andrea mentioned, is a 5-year initiative which is funded by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The initiative was started by Simavi, Solidaridad, and Healthy Entrepreneurs with the aim to socially and economically empower women living in artisanal and small-scale mining communities in Ghana and in Tanzania. We are working with 25 mines, 1,500 women miners, and over 4,000 women living in mining communities. Next slide, please. So what do we see in the small-scale mining sector? For example, in Ghana, over 1 million people are involved in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. And out of these 1 million, over 50% are women. But what do we see? Women are involved in low-paid and low-skilled jobs. I'm happy that this also came up in the previous presentations. These low-paying jobs and low-skilled jobs is planned from just crushing of ore, carrying of ore, and then sometimes washing with their bare hands. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of discriminations at multiple levels. And what we see specifically relates to patriarchal and sociocultural norms that limit women's opportunities. We also see that women are restricted to the type of jobs that they can do. we usually say this job is for men, this job is for women, and it's very typical in the mining sector. Women also lack access to skills, land, and capital. Women face gender-based violence in the mines, in their homes, and even in the communities. Also, they lack access to healthcare, contraception, and sexual and reproductive health and rights information. Next slide, please. Good. So how are we approaching this? What's the approach? How are we doing this? How are we bringing the gender lens into our programming? And what do we even aim to achieve? So first of all, our aim is to have improved working conditions and also improve the positions of women in mines. We saw that one of the key things as a problem or as a barrier to women is that they don't have good working conditions. We saw in the previous picture, women were just working without protective gears. They were also involved in low-paid jobs. So for us, we are working to improve the conditions by creating awareness. Also, we are also engaging the mine owners and then mine managers in responsible mining practices. We are also looking at improved access to and control over resources, improved sexual and reproductive health rights, more recognition for the importance of gender equality in the mines and communities. And then lastly, we increase demand for responsible gold in support of women's needs and rights. Next slide, please. Yes. So as I was presenting earlier, I mentioned that we are targeting specific problems that we have identified. And so our program components are geared towards those problems. And when we want to improve women's position, we need to train mine managers and mine owners. And that is what we are doing on responsible mining practices. For example, reclamation, responsible use of mercury, first aid, child labor, etc. We are also engaging mine managers and policymakers on responsive gender policies in the mining space. Then how do we also engage women to increase control over resources? By forming women's savings and loans group, we are able to do that. I'll explain in in the next slide. We also engage women to increase their skills. How do they enter into new businesses or have access to alternative livelihoods? We also engage market players to increase demand for responsible gold. Next slide, please. So I will narrow down to the two main methodologies that we use to be able to achieve what we are achieving now. So we have two main methodologies. One is EASE, one is EMAP. EASE stands for Economic and Social Empowerment. EMAP stands for Engaging Men in Accountable Practices. So EMAP and EASE are originally developed by IRC, that's the International Rescue Committee, for human settlement or for humanitarian settings, and were proven very effective. So Simavi, who is the lead of this consortium Golden Line, adapted the methodologies for the use in ASM communities. The methodologies aim to, first of all, enhance women's support. As they form groups, they form social networks, and that helps them to support or rely on each other in the mines and then in the communities. We also support using the same approach to increase women's access to and control over economic resources, such as businesses, land, etc. Also, by employing these methodologies, we increase decision-making power of women at all levels, and then also to mitigate gender-based violence. Next slide, please. So just a bit of what we do in EASE to be able to bring gender equity in the ASM, as the artisanal and small-scale mining sector. There are three main steps in the EASE component. That's economic and social empowerment methodology. The first one is the formation of the groups. That is the EASE groups. That is the VSA specifically. The next step is to form what we call gender discussion series. Then the last step in that model is to form business training skills or do more training, capacity building. So just a bit of each of the steps. The first step, which is the formation of the group, is actually to bring women together to have cohesion and support each other. And most importantly, they also save. We use those groups as an entry point to engage women to discuss sexual and reproductive health. We also engage other policymakers and healthcare providers through this Village Savings and Loans group. Then I would like to say that they have a period of 9 to 12 months to save. At the end of the day, or at the end of the 12 month, minimum 9 months, they share their own savings. And it's really going well for them. Then the gender discussion series, we engage the household members of these women to discuss how do they financially plan together and address gender inequalities. We also, at the end of the day, train women to have a skill, because going back to the problems we identified in the mining space, women have low skills. They do not even have alternative livelihoods. So they are exposed to just doing what they have to do to be able to earn a living. So based on that, we give them some knowledge and skills and then support them to go into other livelihood opportunities, including the mining skills. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of Naomi, who is a member of one of the VSLAs, that's a Village Savings and Loans in Takwa. They named their own VSLA, and these are her words. She said, as a member of Nyami Shira VSLA, that's the name of the VSLA in Takwa, my savings have enabled me to access enough capital to start my long-time dream of going into bead making. Now, I have been able to start the business which I do for other women to retail on my behalf. It feels amazing because through my savings, I have been empowered to start my business as well as empower other women to seek livelihoods. Next slide, please. So with the first model I spoke about was the EATS, that's the economic empowerment model. Then the EMAP, engaging men in accountable practice. So for a woman like Naomi, for her to attain what she has to do now, we need to engage the men in her life, the men in her community, the influencers in the community, and then at the district level. So we engage them in a discussion to be able to highlight the issues of women. And first of all, we do that in two steps. The first step is to have a curriculum for women, for the women's group. And then the next step is to have a curriculum for the men's group. So for the women's group, we have 8 sessions. That's a weekly basis. We train the women first of all on violence against women and girls. And then we discuss their hopes. What do they hope to see? Is it a beautiful community with gender-free, gender-based violence, free of abuse from men? So once they bring out their issues and their hopes, in the next model, engaging the men, we highlight, we bring the issues on board for a discussion. And together with men, we explore tools and knowledge to rethink about the beliefs that exist in communities. The idea is to change behaviors to be able to end gender-based violence. Next slide, please. So this is one of the results of the EMAP, that's engaging men in accountable practice. So we have this young man here, name withheld, but for this man, he feels that he can now be a champion or an advocate to lobby for awareness, to lobby and also to create awareness on gender-based violence in his community. He's joining other people in the mines and in the community to help solve some problems with relation to gender-based violence. He's a strong advocate on the Golden Line program. Next slide, please. So just a brief overview of the results we had with our midterm. The program is ending soon. We have had a midterm evaluation and also just ended our end-term evaluation. So from our midterm evaluation, we noticed that 94% in Ghana and then 92% in Ghana of women see more opportunities for earning money. 70% in Ghana, 85% in Ghana reported increase in access to credit. because that is a platform we also give them. There are a lot of results that we can share, but just to, for the purpose of time, I can say that we are achieving a lot, and we would like to share with you in the course of our networking. We can share with you our midterm evaluation reports later on. Next slide, please. So before I end, I would like you to meet Francisca, who is a small-scale miner, and out of our empowerment models, this is what Francisca has to tell us. She said, I feel equal to men. My husband is a miner. I am also a miner. These days, there is nothing like men's job. Women are equally capable of doing those jobs, and I love my job nowadays. Thanks to the Golden Line program, I now know how to take precautions against injuries and other threats, and now I have more income. Together with my husband, I can now think about the future of our kids. So thank you for listening, and then you can, next slide please, you can join the program by reading more on www.thegoldenline.org. You can send us an email also at jointhegoldenline.org. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So now we're going to open up for questions, and I see there are some questions already in the panel. You know, I think about this often, but it's so clear as we have women presenting here from Ghana and Tanzania and Malawi and Peru and Colombia. Systemic and cultural barriers to women's full participation in society exists in nearly every culture and every country. And we have to be a sisterhood to make this end, a sisterhood that extends across the world. And men, you're welcome to join the sisterhood, but you need to be a sister. So, and that ease and EMAP model that you just presented, Gloria, is a powerful model representing that, you know, that we have to do that together. Okay, we've got some questions here. Christina said, Irene mentioned that the program is coming to an end. Well, what does that mean for what's next?
Great. So that also boils down to our sustainable plans or our exit strategies. So first of all, before I talk about funding, we have already had a very good collaboration at the district level, at the community level, and then at the national level. So together with partners, what we did is to start the program with, let's say, government institutions and then opinion leaders. So even when we exit, they are there to support these groups. They are there to support miners. And I also want to mention that mine managers have been very active in the program. And even in our exits, they are there to continue implementation. So those are the structures that we put in place that will forever continue the good works that has already been achieved. And then also together with the district authorities, the gaps that were left behind, together with them, we have developed an action plan for them to continue. So that is with that. And then also we are open for opportunities to collaborate, to further expand. So yeah, that's the little I can say.
The next question was directed to Gloria, but I suspect that both Nathalia and Irene have input on this too. The question was, are the women miners, in this case in Malawi, but around the world, formal and legal, or is that another challenge for women to become formalized?
So that's actually exactly what we do in the project, to formalize them and to make them legal. I think one challenge I didn't really talk about was how in areas where there's ASM mining happening, you find companies then come in and obtain a license for that area. So that's also been a huge challenge, because then they become illegal at a whole new level. They're now encroaching to a mine, you know, a place where there's already a license being held by a company. So what we have done now, we have been working with government very actively, and so they've been training, they've been engaging them in terms of the legal and policy framework. So as of now, the application was done for the license. The geomapping was already done, and they will be able to obtain the license in the next sitting of the committee, but they have the permission from the government now to continue with the mining. Another issue though is that in the long run, if you look at the process now, it's not very accommodating for women to get a license. Well, minors in general, but especially for women, because they don't even have the initial capital for them to obtain it and to visit the offices. So a huge part of our work is also to bring that connection between government and the minors and to help them to get quickly registered. It's not very expensive. It's just that the process is very prohibitive when you look at it from the minors' perspective. So it's just a matter of increasing that level of awareness so that not just the miners that we're working with, but all the other different miners across the country are able to be formalized and able to register and, you know, access markets that can actually empower them, and they're not stuck in this cycle where they continue to do this mining and they're chasing around with the police, but they're able to grow to a different level and get into processing and get into, you know, different levels in the value chain and not just be stuck with extraction.
Nathalia and Irene, do you guys have any observations on formalization in your communities?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. So for us on the Golden Line, we are already engaging licensed small-scale mines. Though in the country, we have unlicensed small-scale mines, which are also operating. But for us, we deal with the licensed one. However, we noticed that in the course of our programming, it's also important to look at how we can target the unlicensed ones, because they are sometimes sort of causes of the barriers or the problems that we see in the mining space. So for us, we negotiate a lot with government. We advocate also for formalization and licensing of these mines. And specifically for formalization, there's now a new policy in Ghana, that's a multilateral mine integrated policy, MMIP, that we have been very instrumental in the negotiation and also discussion. We supported government to make this policy more gender sensitive or gender focused. And with this policy, it's going to address the issue of formalization and also licensing. We are also advocating that women should be given some, at least reduction in the prices or the costs of going through the process of licensing. And also we are advocating that women should be given at least 30% of mining concessions in Ghana, because most of the concessions are owned by men.
Thank you. Nathalia?
Yes, well, with our standards, the craft, we help the artisanal miners to get formalized. And for a more structured mine, for the smaller scale mining, we use the fair mine standard to help them to get formalized. It's important to get that formalization topic so we can achieve a gender equity in the communities.
Excellent. Now, Irene, you spoke to microloans and more financial control for women. Are there any efforts like that in your communities, Nathalia and Gloria?
Yes. For example, we discover, find out that women face another kind of discrimination when we talk about this part of the supply chains. Yes. So it's important to help them, and we create and train them so they can get the loans and they can get all the elements so they can be formalized and get the economic empowerment that they need. Yes.
And for us, it's also the same situation, because there's not a lot of options here right now. And I think that's also probably one of our calls to action, to say that if you look out there, there's not a lot of options for women engaged in mining. Like I said, the men can engage, can use their land as collateral to access small scale loans, informal loans. But for women, it's very difficult. And because the earnings are cut back so much by the capital costs, it means that they don't even have that much to save. What they have, they use to run their households and use for their livelihood. And so that's one thing that we're looking for those opportunities for people that are willing to help us to develop these tailor-made packages where they can access loans, whether it's setting up revolving funds, for example, helping them to access technology where they can buy their own technology as a group, as women, and use that so that they can also increase their productivity and eventually use that to pay off the loans that they are now able to access. But it's a huge challenge, and our banks are currently not doing it. Nobody is ready to invest in small-scale miners because they feel it's so risky. Wasted women who don't really have anything to offer as surety.
That EMAP program that Irene spoke about, where you're reaching out to the men in the community and enlisting them, how have your efforts been accepted or resisted or just viewed among the male populations in the communities where you're working?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. So some few lessons to share. It's very difficult or challenging mobilizing men. And, the status quo is such that the men dominate everywhere in discussions, in leadership, in decision-making at multiple levels, whether at home, whether at the community, or in government. So it was very difficult bringing the discussion to the table at all levels. We faced so much challenges, but we used a strategy to bring about the change. What we did was, when you get to just one man, so it's like a peer-to-peer approach. When you get one man, you engage him, and he engages his colleague, and then you are able to form a group out of that. It's now, I can say, it's beautiful, but very difficult to do. And then also, it requires a lot of energy and regular check-ins. You need to check in a lot to see whether they are keeping the group central and priority, focusing on the priorities, why they are meeting. Otherwise, you end up having different discussion on the table, even politics. So as much as possible, we try to engage them and then regularly ensure that they are keeping the discussion central. So yes, though it was challenging, we ended up using strategies and were able to achieve.
Nathalia and Gloria, what have your experiences been in terms of men's reaction to your initiatives?
This is the reaction.
In Nairobi for the gender panel. And Pauline just finally stood up and said, "You have to listen to us." I mean, the women in the room were on their feet screaming. So yes, we all feel that way. Go ahead and say it, Gloria.
Okay, Gloria or me?
Go
ahead. Okay, well, that in my presentation, I explained that it's very important to keep in mind that we are going to face a very resistant public. Yes, so it's very important to incorporate the gender approach with a progressive point of view. Yes, because this requires a cultural transformation. Yes, and for that you have to involve involvement in this topic, because this is not only a female topic. Yes, we have to work with men, and also we had a very good examples and a very good experience in coal mines in Boyacá, and we developed some workshops about human masculinities, and it's a good way to incorporate and talk about all the gender roles, explain how women can get more work, adding all these mining activities. And with this workshop, we have the opportunity to talk with men, and with the policy, creating the policy, the institutional policy of gender, we create another activities to where men can participate. Yes.
An experience that I would like to share is when we went into the community and we started with the gender sensitization. And so we said, you have to form into clubs, because to register as cooperatives and to obtain a license, it has to be allocated to a specific group. So we then said, okay, so you need to organize yourselves and nominate leadership within your groups, and make sure that you're very aware of the 50-50, because you need to be in a position where you can equally represent everybody. So I mean, they said, no, let's just call out the names and then of the leaders, and they can stand up and be nominated. Not a single woman accepted. There were 2 women who were nominated by fellow women, and not a single one accepted. They all refused. And I mean, I literally had to negotiate with them for like 30 minutes with the women. And it's because they were so scared that I don't see why I should be in that role, because I'm going to be bullied. I don't know what they're going to do to me. I don't want to put myself in that position to be like I'm going against the men. It's going to work against me. So we obviously realize that there's a lot more work to do with the men, because they need to get to a point where they're also demonstrating that they're accommodative of women. Just because they allow them to come to the mines now and be in work together, but they're not necessarily working together. And so we need to get to a point where both sides understand that they play a crucial role in empowering one another. Eventually we nominated women. I really had to negotiate with them and tell them that this is an opportunity for you to really have your voice heard and to make these issues that you have very clear and challenge them. So we're just starting off, and I mean, when I see Golden Line and they're finishing, and I'm thinking we have such a long way to go. And to be honest, it's terrifying, because you're looking at cultural issues, looking at social issues, and they're so deeply embedded into the practices. But I think for us, one of the things that we will continue to do is to actively engage both sides and to make them more aware of the role that they play and how they can support one another. We're also aware that the men need the women just as much as the women need the men. And so bringing those conversations out in the open and saying that, have this conversation and talk about the negative aspects and how we can work together to address them. But I think it's been so helpful being on this panel and hearing from Irene how they're doing it. And that's something that I think would be very interested to learn from and to possibly replicate here in Malawi and see how it works for our community.
Yeah, that EMAP is a powerful map. We've got a couple minutes for each of you to close. I'm going to pull Gloria's slides up because I have them now, just so you can see some of the images she wanted to share with you. So Gloria, maybe you can start your closing comments while I get your slides visible. Which seems to take forever every time I try it. All right, so share your final thoughts with us and I'll flip through the slides.
So I think there's so many opportunities in terms of the SM sector here in Malawi. And when we talk about the gender aspect, I think it's very important what has been raised, that men need to be part of that conversation, because any meaningful change will only happen if men are actively involved. But also I think we need to explore more partnerships, and we need to go beyond just talking about formalization, because the reality of all that is that it needs capital. It needs for those people to move from a place where they're doing the bare minimum to being empowered to do so much more, and that needs capital. And so many people shun away from providing that stepping stone for those communities. And so that's something that for us, I think that it really needs to be talked about in such platforms and explore such opportunities for how we can provide those opportunities for growth for women and the communities affected by mining. But also I think there's so many opportunities to leverage on the work that has been done by other partners like Goldline. So I mean, we're really excited about networking with different partners. Swedish IM, our current partner, is only going as far as engaging in the formalization and the trainings, but in terms of progression in processing and how they can do value addition, those are opportunities that are still out there, and we think that they're things that women should be considered in and engaged in and those are places that we want to be found in. We want to put our women in those spaces, and we want to be able to grow them beyond just formalization and registration, but to get to a point where they can run their own enterprises, their own social enterprises, and really benefit from mining. So thank you so much. You can get in touch with us. My contacts are available on my profile, and I think Andrea will share them as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity and for all your feedback.
Thank you, and thank you for your work. Irene, Nathalia, which one of you wants to go next? Okay, I'll pick. Irene, go next.
Right. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining the conversation. And one clear remark I would like to give is gender equity is not just about women, or it's not only for women to champion. It's an issue that is important to both men and women. So as much as possible, all hands must be on board. Also, we are available for networking, further collaboration and discussion. You can link through the Golden Line website. You can also contact me directly for further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathalia?
Can you hear me now? It's raining here in Bogota, sorry. Maybe the sun.
You're fine.
But I think my kind suggestion for jewelries are to buy and use fair gold. And you can do that supporting the fair mine standard, because in this way you can support mines that work for gender equity, environmental issues, human rights issues that is necessary to prevent all the problems that the mining sector faces, and the miners are vulnerable of this situation.
Very good. And now we're out of time, which makes me sad because I could talk to you three all day and I have so many other questions to ask. But thank you all for your incredible work and for sharing it with us. And hopefully we can take some of the models of the work that you're doing and help other people within the community also apply those models in their own work. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.